That day, I had been working from home, spending most of my time in the study. Since morning, the cheerful chatter of my husband, Thomas, and his daughter, Hannah, echoed through the house. It was the first time I'd heard them talk with such excitement. Curiosity got the better of me, and I quietly crept toward the hallway to listen. Then I heard something that stopped me cold. "It's so much more peaceful without that annoying wife around," Thomas said, his voice lighthearted. Annoying wife? Was he talking about me? My heart sank, and my mind scrambled to make sense of it, replaying his words over and over. Did he really see me like that? Before I could recover from the shock, Hannah chimed in. "We still need her for my college fees, though. We can't do without that human ATM." Human ATM? Those words stung deeper than I could have imagined. Was that all I was to them? A source of money? I had given so much to support Hannah, believing it was my role as a stepmother, hoping my care would eventually earn her trust and affection. But now, it was clear they didn't value me. They only valued what I provided. Fighting back tears, I quietly returned to my room. My hands trembled as I began packing a suitcase, taking only the essentials. When they left the house for dinner, I slipped out the door without a word. As I drove away, I felt a mix of heartbreak and resolve. Just because I was lonely didn't mean I deserved this. If all they wanted was my money, I had no reason to stay. My name is Catherine, and I'm a mid-level accountant. For 15 years, I've worked diligently in my field, building a steady, stable career. After my first marriage ended, I threw myself into my work, using it as both a distraction and a lifeline. Even during the toughest times, I stayed focused, knowing my career was my anchor. My first husband, Zach, had struggled with alcohol dependency. At first, it seemed like he just drank a little too much on occasion, but over time, it became a daily crutch. He carried unresolved pain from his past, pain I couldn't heal for him, no matter how hard I tried. Counseling or a structured recovery program could have helped, but Zach wasn't ready to face his demons. When our marriage ended, I wasn't lost. I leaned on the skills I had honed through years of hard work. Eventually, I transitioned to a better-paying position and found financial stability. Still, I sometimes wondered if I was meant to live without a family of my own, focusing solely on my career. Then, I met Thomas. Thomas worked as a pharmaceutical salesperson, often visiting my office as part of his job. He wasn't particularly assertive, but there was a gentleness about him that drew me in. My nurturing instinct kicked in, and I wanted to support him. He shared his struggles as a single father raising Hannah after his ex-wife's infidelity. His vulnerability touched me, and I believed we could build a life together. But as time went on, cracks began to show. Thomas often spoke about wanting to find a better-paying job, but seemed stuck in a cycle of switching roles without real reflection. When I asked about his strengths, his answers were vague and uninspiring. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "I just feel like I keep failing." I tried to encourage him, explaining that failure was a stepping stone to growth. But his reluctance to take risks or learn from his mistakes worried me. He seemed more content dreaming about success than working for it. Still, I reassured him that my income could provide stability for us while he figured things out. Instead of feeling supported, he seemed to interpret my words as a safety net. "Thanks, Catherine," he said. "Honestly, being an employee doesn't suit me, so this is a relief. I'm not planning to quit now, but it's nice to know I don't have to worry about increasing my income." His response left me uneasy, as if he was shifting the entire financial burden onto me. But I pushed those feelings aside, telling myself he would eventually find his footing. When Thomas and I got married, I met his daughter, Hannah, for the first time. She looked me up and down with a critical gaze before bluntly asking, "So, what exactly do you bring to the table? Good job, decent salaries?" Her words took me aback for a moment. I was stunned into silence, realizing she was essentially questioning my worth. I felt a wave of embarrassment. I didn't consider myself particularly glamorous or charming, but her bluntness caught me off guard. "Hannah, that's rude," Thomas interjected. "I didn't mean anything by it," she replied casually, shrugging. I held back a retort, not wanting to create conflict during our first meeting. Instead, I tried to keep the conversation light. So, what kind of work do you do, Catherine? She asked with unexpected curiosity. Surprised, I decided to share a little about my job. Maybe I thought my experience might inspire her or spark ideas for her own future. Well, I work in accounting. Do you know what accountants do? Yeah, like handling expense reports or reimbursements, she said nonchalantly. That's part of it, I replied. But there's a lot more involved. I explained my role in simple terms, handling monthly closings, preparing consolidated reports, and crafting financial strategies. I talked about managing transactions, creating budgets, and overseeing financial planning. I tried to convey that my job required both analytical and management skills. What kind of qualifications do you need for that job? She asked. Well, you need accounting certifications, and if you want to advance, experience in finance or banking can be really helpful in this field. Experience often matters as much as education, I added, hoping to convey the expertise my work required. But Hannah looked completely uninterested. Thomas chimed in, his tone casual. That sounds pretty busy. So, how much do you make doing all that? For a moment, I almost answered truthfully. My salary was just shy of 6 figures, a milestone I was working toward. But when I noticed Hannah smirking and glancing at Thomas, as if they were sharing some inside joke, I decided to give a vague response. Let's just say it's a bit above average for an accountant, I said with a polite smile. Hannah rolled her eyes and made a dismissive noise. She glanced at Thomas, and the two of them exchanged a look that made me feel like an outsider. Trying to lighten the atmosphere, I continued explaining more about my work, but my words seemed to fall flat. I reminded myself that this was just the beginning. Building a family takes time. I thought I was determined to support both Thomas and Hannah and be part of their lives. If it came down to it, I was even willing to support Hannah's education financially. However, what I didn't realize at the time was Thomas's true intentions. Over time, it became clear that he had been planning to rely on my income from the very start. He even mentioned wanting to enroll Hannah in an expensive private university, one that was known to accept students as long as the tuition was paid up front. Once we started living together, I began noticing troubling patterns. For instance, Hannah often skipped her tutoring sessions without telling me. One day, the tutoring center even called to inform me that she hadn't shown up. Hey, Hannah, I knocked on her door. What happened with tutoring today? She answered with a bored tone. I attended remotely. Her excuse didn't sit right with me. The center had recently switched back to in-person sessions and wouldn't have called if she'd attended virtually. I started to worry about her commitment to her education. Did she really have the motivation for college, or was this just another way to take advantage of my support? Hannah, if you're struggling with any subjects, I can help you review if you'd like, I offered. Why would I need help? Hannah shot back, her tone sharp. I just thought maybe I could help, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. You might feel more comfortable asking me questions. She let out a heavy sigh, clearly irritated. Look, I don't need any of that. It's kind of weird that you're trying to act all motherly. Her words stung more than I expected. My offer wasn't meant to insult her, but it was clear she had taken it the wrong way. I instantly regretted saying anything. Perhaps she was already feeling frustrated about her studies, and my well-meaning comment had only added to her stress. I'm sorry, I said quickly. You're right. You should go at your own pace. I didn't mean to overstep, but deep down, I knew the issue was serious. Missing tutoring sessions, especially in a fast-paced college prep program, would only make things harder for her in the long run. Without a strong commitment, Hannah could easily fall behind. Later that evening, I decided to bring it up with Thomas. Thomas, can we talk about Hannah's studies for a minute? Sure, what's going on? He asked. Please don't scold her, I began, trying to tread carefully, but her tutoring center has called a few times. It seems she hasn't been attending regularly. Oh, yeah, that doesn't surprise me, he said with a sigh, brushing it off as if it were no big deal. She's always hated studying. He smiled as he added, she's got her eye on a private university, one of those schools that will take her as long as we can pay the tuition. His nonchalant attitude unsettled me. Perhaps Hannah lacked motivation because she believed everything would be taken care of for her. But as her stepmother, I didn't feel it was my place to point this out. Instead, I nodded and let the conversation drop. I returned to my room, preparing for an online meeting. My new schedule allowed me to work from home twice a week, giving me more opportunities to observe Thomas and Hannah's behaviors. Little by little, my earlier worries about their intentions began to resurface. I couldn't shake the feeling that they might be expecting me to foot the bill for Hannah's entire college tuition. While I had no problem supporting her dreams, I didn't want to be taken advantage of. As the days passed, I began noticing more troubling patterns. Thomas, for example, would often sleep in on weekdays or return home early in the afternoon. One morning, I walked into the living room and was surprised to see him there. "Oh, hey," I said. "You're here?" "Yes, it's my work-from-home day. Are you off today?" "Actually, I took the morning off," he replied casually. I was really tired from a late night of work yesterday, but as I stood there, I caught a faint whiff of alcohol in the air. It seemed more likely he had been out drinking than working late. I let it slide, but over time, I realized these mornings were becoming a pattern. Thomas often talked about how he never seemed to fit in at work. I had always assumed he was just unlucky, but now I started to wonder if his own habits were to blame. One morning, I accidentally overslept by about 30 minutes because I hadn't been feeling well. My first meeting wasn't until 10 a.m., so I planned to take it slow and ease into the day. As I lay in bed, half asleep, I heard voices coming from downstairs. I glanced at the clock. It was already 9 a.m. Why were there voices at this hour? Thomas should have left for work, and Hannah should have been at school. Curious, I tiptoed down the stairs. "Dad, are you taking the day off again?" I heard Hannah ask. "Of course," Thomas replied, his voice relaxed. "I'm already using up my vacation days. Might as well use them before I quit." "Wait, are you really quitting?" Hannah's voice was filled with surprise. "I'll be technically between jobs," Thomas replied casually. "Not a slacker. Just, taking some time to think." I froze in place. Was he seriously planning to quit his job without telling me? "Well, I'm just a student," Hannah said, her tone casual. "So, I don't have to worry about jobs yet." They kept talking as if responsibility was an abstract concept, something they didn't have to face. And then I heard the words that shattered any illusions I had left. "Life's so much more peaceful without the annoying wife around," Thomas said, chuckling. Annoying wife. Was he really talking about me? My stomach twisted as the realization hit. My breath caught in my throat. To him, I wasn't a partner. I was an inconvenience. And then Hannah's voice chimed in, adding insult to injury. "But we can't have her gone completely. I mean, I still need her around for college expenses, right?" I froze. Did they truly think of me as nothing more than an ATM? A high school student saying that about me was beyond disrespectful. My head spun as I pieced together the truth. From the beginning, I'd been nothing more than financial support to them. Quietly, I stepped back upstairs, my heart racing. I didn't make a sound as I packed my largest suitcase with essentials. When I heard them leave for lunch, I seized the opportunity to escape. Enough was enough. Staying would only drain me emotionally and financially. I had given them countless chances, believing they would change, but they had taken my kindness for weakness. As I walked out of the house, I felt both a weight lifting and a pang of sadness. On my desk, I left the divorce papers. They would know I was serious. I rented a small but cozy apartment near my workplace. It wasn't luxurious, but it gave me the peace and privacy I desperately needed. Almost immediately, the calls began. Thomas left multiple messages, all of which I ignored. I knew he wasn't calling out of affection. He was desperate. A month passed without real contact, though his attempts only grew more frequent. Then, late one night, my phone started buzzing persistently. This time it was Hannah. I could imagine the panic setting in now that their ATM was gone, but deep down, I felt no sympathy. Finally, around midnight, Thomas called again. Sighing, I picked up. I was ready to put an end to this once and for all. "It's late, Thomas. This is highly inappropriate," I said flatly. "Catherine, finally. Where are you?" His voice sounded panicked, but I knew better than to fall for it. That's not important. Just file the divorce papers, I said firmly. Divorce? Why? He asked. His faint confusion only fueled my frustration. You know exactly why, Thomas. You said enough. I'm done being disrespected. Look, we need to talk. Amelia is planning on attending open house events, and she really wants you there. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Oh, you mean for that expensive private college? The one where tuition costs a fortune. He hesitated. Well, yes, but it's important for her future. She needs to be prepared. Ethan, I interrupted, my voice firm. It's time you face reality. Supporting Amelia is your responsibility, not mine. His silence spoke volumes. This time, I wouldn't give in to emotional blackmail. Maybe it's time you found a stable job and stepped up, I said bluntly. Can't we just talk this out, he pleaded. I'm willing to try again. Really?
No, Ethan.
The way you and Amelia treated me, there's no going back from that. He fell silent again, seemingly out of arguments. I guess I never thought it would come to this, he finally muttered. That's because you took me for granted. Both of you did, I said, before hanging up. For the first time, I felt a strange sense of closure. I had said everything I needed to say. Over time, I stopped checking for their messages. There was no need to revisit the past. I focused on myself, enjoying the freedom and peace that came with moving on. Amelia eventually dropped out of her university plans and took a part-time job. From what I heard, she was struggling with the reality of independence, but at least she was learning. Ethan, on the other hand, drifted between jobs, occasionally reaching out for one last favor. I never responded. I had given them enough chances. It was time to live for myself. I even adopted a rescue cat, finding joy in the small, comforting moments of companionship. Slowly but surely, I rebuilt my life, one step at a time. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free.